pleasure being here tonight. I see the full house, so I'm very honored. Actually, this is, I should say, the fanciest speech I'm going to give, thanks to you guys. I've been in conferences this year alone 17 times since the beginning of the year. 15 of them have been in a speaker role. I, in fact, just landed this morning from Las Vegas, which I was enjoying one of the few non-speaker conferences that I joined, a software conference. I have no abilities of writing advanced software. That's what my brother does here. He's with me here. So thanks, Jay, again for inviting. So I was wondering, because the only other APICS speech I gave was this year in June, and I saw few people who attended. So who was in that conference in Central Jersey chapter, June? Gary?
Yeah.
You? There was a few more students as well? No? Okay. Oh, who was in the Rutgers University Business School last year when I presented? There are a few students here. So it's either you really like me, or you didn't understand and you came for the second time. So which one?
We like you.
You like me? Okay, thank you. So thanks again for the invitation. I enjoy talking about supply chain topics. I enjoy practicing supply chain consulting. We are a company called Supply Chain Wizard for that reason, for our passion in supply chain management. I would like to talk to you about supply chain in a different lens. I would like to talk to you about the supply chain of the future and the big transformation that's going on called digital supply chain. Or however you want to call it with different buzzwords, and I know all these consulting companies invented these buzzwords so they can sell more, like big data. So how many of you heard big data? You think it's big? How big it is? I had no idea. I learned how big the big data is this year. Believe me, I'm going to tell you how. So how many of you heard IoT? Half? How many of you have not heard IoT? So it stands for Internet of Things. Isn't that interesting?
I've heard that.
So I remember the time, and I'm not that old, I remember the time when my computer did not connect to internet, there was no internet. I bought my first modem in the early 90s, mid-90s, and that was fun, exploring connectivity with other people. I even made myself a girlfriend in UK when I was in Turkey, can you believe that? So think about the possibilities of things connected to one another. And supply chain professionals, what are we connecting? We are connecting people, we are connecting materials, we are connecting and tracing the cash flows, a lot of things. Supply chain is a very complex topic. So the topic of my presentation today is creating a digital supply chain, and I really don't want to be claiming any full expertise in the industry. What I'm here today is I'm here to tell you about my experience. Right? Everybody talks about big data. I have seen and read a lot of white papers and articles, and only to feel at the end of the articles, I didn't really understand what he really meant. So all nice words and theories about how good it is, but what is it really, right? So I would like to make that come to life based on my experience. Please feel free to ask me any questions, stop me. We can have a chat. I think we're starting a little early, so we have about an hour, 10 minutes to go. And whenever you're bored, you can stop me. So I love to talk. So here's the visual version of what Jay told you about. I'm the founder and CEO of Supply Chain Wizard. We're a supply chain management consulting company. We also have our software solutions. We started building ourselves last year, and it turned out to be a pretty good business. So we're investing heavily in software as we go. Prior to that, I was with Sandoz, again in supply chain, and prior to that, I was with McKinsey & Company. So I have seen supply chain practices in many different industries, many different countries. So it's fascinating how similar it is as well as how different they are from one another. So here's the agenda. A little bit about introduction about myself and my company, so you can better understand where I'm coming from. A chapter dedicated on understanding today's supply chain management challenges and what skill set we need. I see a lot of students here, which is great. They're here to learn, and get ready for the real world. So what skills you need that unfortunately not many schools are teaching. And then with that background, I would like to talk about supply chain analytics big data and dashboards, a lot of buzzwords, but I want to bring that to life with some case studies that, from our experiences, and end with an Internet of Things discussion to see maybe half of the room who has heard this term for the first time relate to it, going forward, and how that can be useful in supply chain management. So in coming here, Jay warned me at least 5 times that this is a joint session between APICS and ISM. So we even have a digital procurement case that we prepared for you. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Okay, so what do we do at Supply Chain Wizard? We have 3 core competencies. First of all, it's serialization, track and trace consulting. This is a big issue in the pharmaceutical industry right now globally. And for those of you who are not in pharmaceutical industry, you'll hear about it soon when the regulation knock on your door, specifically starting with food and beverage. So who here is from the pharmaceutical industry? Let me see my close colleagues. So the whole table here, some clients actually, some former colleagues. Which company? Glenmark. Par. Xandos. Okay. Who is from? Novartis. Very nice. So all local. So who is from consumer packaged goods industry? Sorry?
It used to be.
It used to be. Which company?
Pinnacle Foods.
Food. Okay. Food and beverage.
Yeah.
Okay. So what other industries we have? Who is from automotive industry? Anybody in New Jersey automotive? Kind of. Parts.
Yes.
Tier 1, Tier 2 suppliers?
Fuel and additives.
Okay, so
division of
energy.
BASF.
Okay, so we know some students, they are yet to choose their industry. What else? What other industries we have in the room? Telecom. Okay, so you're familiar with Internet of Things?
Yeah, oh yes.
For sure, oh yeah.
And big data.
Yeah, and big data, and you know how big that is.
Well, pretty big.
Okay, what else?
Chemical.
Transportation logistics, that's big.
Large chocolate before that.
Yeah, so you know how automated trucking works now, the future of trucking. Good. Chemistry, chemicals. Okay, great. What else? Retail. So you see, supply chain is everywhere. That's why you're all in here in the same room. Otherwise, many of the conferences I've been to are focused on specific industries. But when you say supply chain management, it unites us because it has the beginning, when it starts with the supplier, all the way to the customer's customer. And everybody can relate to what we do in the supply chain, but it's quite challenging. It requires a lot of understanding, technicalities, and then automation. So the second thing we do is the supply chain management software and solutions. That's where we attempt to automate some of these processes to help with our client engagements. And the last part, as of early this year, we got into the IoT and under 2 concepts, digital factory and digital supply chain. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And this is the last slide about Supply Chain Wizard. So we have been growing pretty fast over the last 2.5 years. We reached to more than 25 countries with our engagements. We were quite rapid in our growth. So we have our office in Central Jersey in Princeton as our headquarters. We have 3 offices in Turkey, an affiliate office in India, a brand new office in Berlin that is opened in September this year. And last week we opened our Dutch office in Amsterdam, literally like incorporating, before I'm coming here. So we're growing because our clients expect us to be global, because their supply chains are global. So what are some of the challenges in supply chain? And I want to make this real for you by just listing the top 5 that I could think of. I previously presented some of these slides in the Logipharma in Switzerland a couple of years ago, and I want to combine these challenges with the actual skills and talent needed. So you're pretty familiar how difficult it is to find talent in supply chain management, right? How many of you have open positions in your companies with supply chain talent? Okay, I will leave my cards here after so that we can fill in the gaps as you're searching for the talent. Last time when I was in my full-time role, it took me 8 months to find an associate director for supply chain. 8 months. So what is wrong? There's a lot of demand, it's growing, but the industry is not keeping up. So APICS is playing a critical mission here in educating and providing that education. So I want to talk about the relations. So volatility and risk in supply chain. such as supply shortages. An earthquake happens in Japan, knocks out a couple of API manufacturers, nobody can get the API, and guess what? They're the only API manufacturer for that product. We don't have products anymore. Demand spikes. Your competitor goes out of business, or they were impacted by that API manufacturer earthquake, and now all the demand shifts to you. Your demand is doubled. What would you do? We are in pharmaceutical industry, right? Especially in the generics industry. We are competing with 10 plus different competitors, depending on the product. Everybody's selling the same thing. Doesn't matter, exactly the same thing, same formulation, same everything. So you can lose a customer in a day. You can gain a customer. So what would you do in that settings? So the top two skills needed, project management and prioritization. I've been through as much as I can in the education sector, right? I've been through all the way. I finished the PhD student, I stopped there, didn't go for postdoc. But nobody taught me project management in the school. Nobody taught me supply chain management, project management. And prioritization. The prioritization was a topic that we solved for advanced, as an advanced problem. So how would you prioritize? When there's a lot of things happening, how would you prioritize? That's a skill that you would need. Complexity of the supply chain and the trade-offs. So how many of you have solved or attempted to solve a trade-off problem between inventory and service level? How many of you were successful? Good. Good. So do you believe that we can increase the service level by reducing the inventory?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? It's counterintuitive. How? The trade-offs. So you need analytical skills to do that. Unfortunately, we don't have too much analytical skills. Within those shortages, majority of that is the analytical people, business analysts, people with advanced degrees, right? Again, prioritization. Incentives. So, who is from the procurement department? Let me see the hands. Procurement department. How many of these procurement folks are incentivized by the percentage reduction in price every year? One, that's it? 2, 3, 4. How many is like the overall spend reduction? That's your incentive. So isn't that counterintuitive to what the other guys are trying to do? Building relationship with the supplier. How are you going to build relationship by beating them up every year?
Well, you measure them.
That's what you're measured on. So your KPIs are not end-to-end. I don't care about the price, I care the service level. Or this guy, poor guy called supply chain planner or supply planner is responsible for the inventory, but he has almost no control over the inventory.
The shareholders want the lower price.
That's what the shareholders want.
Much better ROI.
So, cross-functional leadership. That's what we are missing in supply chain management. And change management. So how can you convince a site manager, site head, to lower the production volumes because you're pumping too much inventory in the warehouse? His incentive is what? Unit cost. So when the site head's incentive is unit cost, what is he gonna do? Make more. Crank up the production volumes. Maybe do some Lean Six Sigma to the level that he can reduce the cost. But if you pump the production, what will the warehouse guys do? So my wife used to work for United Technologies in the carrier, the AC maker, and Athens, Georgia. So she was in the warehouse. Actually, the warehouse was wide open with a lot of aisles full of stuff, and then even the whole backyard was full of stuff. So she approached the procurement person, the lady. She said, "How do you set your inventory level targets? How do you manage it, in order to make sure that we don't run out?" She said, "It's simple. I always order more than I need. Always." And she never set foot in the warehouse. Never. The warehouse guys were asking, "Is this crazy? What's going on? I have all this stuff in the aisles. I can't move my forklifts around." She never talked to the other guy. Who cares? I'm incentivized because my managers yell at me when I run out of inventory. So when your manager yell at you when you run out of inventory and nobody cares if you have too much inventory, what would you do? I would order more than I need every time. Is it good for the company? No. Strategic change. How many of you have been through at least one merger or acquisition in your career? So take a guess. I'm from the pharma industry. I was going through with one of my clients here. Actually, I've been through multiple acquisitions and mergers with them. But in their boardroom, I was looking at this question: how many mergers are happening in the pharma industry? How many mergers on average in a year do you think is happening in the pharma industry? Take a guess.
Dozen.
Sorry?
Dozen.
Dozen? 12? You're talking about US market? Globally?
24?
80.
35.
Come on, is that it?
40.
150?
10 million.
It's 200 mergers and acquisitions every year for the last 10 years on average. 200. So what happens? You've all been through a merger case, right? You're working on 5 projects, you're a supply chain guy. If you have anything less than 5 projects, I would doubt that you're in a supply chain position, right? So, a merger happened. What would be the new priority for you? The merger. Stop whatever you're doing. We need to, hit these timelines and target, incentives or synergies by this deadline. You're closing the deal. Stop whatever you're doing. Change management. Project management. How do you manage this many projects with limited resources? So, and then the talent shortage, of course. So these are all very typical cross-industry challenges that we're experiencing that all require some significant talent and skills. But I have not been told, and I've been to pretty nice schools in my career, student career. I have not been told, maybe except for the analytical skills, thanks to Georgia Tech. None of the change management, cross-functional leadership, none of the prioritization skills. Definitely not, human relation skills, which, when I was getting my job, my first pharma job, the VP of operations asked me, what do you think the human factor in this job? I said 70% plus. That's the sentence that got me the job. I said, the rest, it's easy, it's math. I know how to do the math, but most of it is the people, right? So this is a complex world for supply chain management. So what is this big data and analytics, and how is that going to help? How is that going to help me in my supply chain challenges and meeting those challenges? So the reason I started this in the background chapter as the challenges and the skills needed, human, and there's a shortage. Well, I guess there's an answer to that. You can automate some of the repetitive tasks in the supply chain with the help of data. If you have the right data at the right time, what logic you can apply to that data, you can make a lot of decisions automatically. Well, that means obviously some losses in jobs, but potentially people are doing the repetitive jobs. But we have a shortage. And I bet, who is here who wants to do for the rest of their career exactly the same thing every day, 8 hours a day? Who wants to do a repetitive job? You wouldn't be here in APICS, right? You will be replaced by a robot very soon. And you don't enjoy your career if you're doing the same thing over and over again. And there were jobs in government, licking, envelopes and doing things repetitively. Like what? We have machines now. The Industrial Revolution replaced a lot of human capital with machines. Well, this is the new digital innovation and revolution. It's replacing decision-making skills and repetitive things with algorithms. And algorithms need data. So I would like to talk about 4 case studies, all from our own experience, starting with the serialization program. So before I start though, I want to give you some background on what track and trace and serialization means in a few slides. So pharma industry colleagues, you heard about serialization, right? And you love it? No, not necessarily. Who has been exposed to serialization, track and trace in other industries? Which industry?
Well, I was in aerospace, but I was also in telecom,
Okay, aerospace, where you need to know where each part is, right? Traceability.
UTC as well.
Okay, UTC barcodes. What about defense? You need to know where all these nuclear bombs are, right? You need to track them. I guess it's becoming even more important now after the election. We need to know every one of them where they are. So here is here are a few pictures for you to illustrate what some counterfeit manufacturers are doing around the world right now. And these are not the only countries that have counterfeiting. So I can tell you, what is this? Liquid manufacturing, liquid bottling operation, tabletting operation, maybe a compression here. So according to the World Health Organization, 10% of the world drug supply is counterfeit. 10%, let me repeat that. 10% of the world drug supply is counterfeit. It's an industry that is $75 billion a year. That's bigger than many other real industries. And no real penalty when you get caught. They're just like they shut down your manufacturing facility. They don't really follow the SOPs here, I guess. Not much quality staff, so it's cheaper to make the same price. According to Interpol, this cross-country police organization, and I don't know where they get their analytics from. It's very difficult to get the data on this. About 1 million people die because of counterfeit drugs every year. 1 million people. In some African countries, up to 30% of the drug supply is counterfeit. 30%. Children are dying of malaria because the drug that they got is counterfeit. It doesn't work. So what is going on and what the world is doing about this? So what happens is every country is trying now to pass a legislation that requires every single drug product to be traced in the supply chain so they can trace it back all the way to the manufacturer. So these counterfeit drugs cannot make it into the supply chain, into the legitimate supply chain. Well, here's another question for you. FBI did an analysis on counterfeit drugs online. So they went all over the world with online websites and ordered drugs from the online websites. And whenever they see that there's no real address. So what do you think, like the percentage-wise of the websites selling drugs? How much of them are selling counterfeit?
85%.
Oh, that's a little bit too much, but more than 50%. That's what FDA and FBI found. More than 50% of online websites selling drugs, when they cover their address, most of them claim to be a Canadian based. They're counterfeit. When the real drug cost is $10 and the consumer is finding something for 80% discount, what would they do? They buy. And people die from this. So some of the major countries in the world have passed their legislation. The green ones are the ones that are final legislations already put in place, but it's not due yet. In the United States, I'm going to come to in a second. Our legislation was passed by President Obama in 2013, November 27th, with a 10-year window. First year there was a milestone for manufacturer. The fourth year window, in next year, 12 months to go, is the deadline to put a serial number on every single product at the unit level. So the wine bottles over there have a barcode, but it's the same batch number. So all these red wines that you consume, by the way, it's all not gone. Well, by the way, a side note. The APICS presentation I gave in June was the same type as this one. You already had dinner and wine before the speech, so my feedback is much better than every other speech that I had. Maybe it has some, something to do with my performance as well, during the one before going up. So every single sellable unit will have a serial number on them after November 2017 in the US. So what it means, instead of one batch number for the same 10,000 units, we're going to have 10,000 unique serial numbers which we can trace in the supply chain. You scan that barcode, the 2D barcode, it's no longer that linear UPC barcode, it's a more efficient 2D barcode. You scan, there's a GTIN number, Global Trade Identification number, that's unique globally for that product, and then the serial number associated to that product. So what does this do? It provides a serialization. If you aggregate it to bundles and cases and pallets, if somebody scans the aggregated unit, which is the pallet, you know exactly which serial numbers are in that pallet, in that case, in that bundle. So what does this do? It gives you the traceability end to end. So FBI or FDA, whoever is investigating a drug product that is a suspect product, can trace it all the way back and find out if this is a legitimate product or not. And if they cannot find if it's a legitimate product, then they can find the source of it or how they got it, in which step of the supply chain. So this is a big deal. Pharma industry is investing billions, not millions, billions into this right now as we speak. It's already covering 88% of the world GDP, and it's a 5 to 10 year timeline. So we'll be busy for a while with this in the US, around the world. It's going to come to your industries as well. It's going to go from the finished goods tracking, as it is in pharma, all the way to API and raw material tracking. So what is that actually? It is creating tons and tons of data. Your ERP systems that is designed, I have a friend here who is implementing ERP systems. Those are designed to handle the batch numbers and the batch level data. So for every single batch, you're going to have 10,000, 20,000 more data. So your data records are going in crazy amounts. So that much data is the big data for pharmaceutical industry. So what are we going to do with that data? If I can trace all my products at any given time, what can I do? So that's the real question. And your government is basically, some governments, not the US government, is asking to report on this every step of the way. So the Turkish government, by total coincidence, I'm originally from Turkey, they were the first country in the world to put this in place, back in 2012. And you know how much money they saved? Just the government? $1 billion a year. Why? Any guess?
He's taking what medication, where it's coming from, selling what, and
Believe me, Turkish government could not care less about the patient side of the things. I know where you're starting, but what they were losing is taxes. So prescription drugs require what? It's called prescription, it requires prescription. But the Turkish pharmacies were handing you the drug without even asking your prescription. So now government knows every single unit that you sell, and they can come in. And we did a seminar early 2015. The guys who work on the IT side of this, they're also monitoring the data. They look at this tiny little pharmacy in the southeastern part of Turkey who has 94,000 pieces of the same drug in their inventory. So government officials go in, knock the door. Hello, I'm from the government. Show me where these 94,000 units are. And it's nowhere to be found. What happened? You sold it. Here's your new tax bill. I know what you sold. And then the reimbursement side of the things, you reimburse if you have a government program for your insurance, you actually file for reimbursement and you get your money back. So what happens is they look at this batch number, same barcode, they file something and government gives you money. Oh, I file it again, I get my money again. I file it 10 times, I get my money 10 times. Nobody's tracking it. So new world, you file for that serial number, you get your money. It's like Walmart. You pay $10.05 for that product, you're going to get $10.05 back. Because they are knowing exactly which transaction number, which product you got. Even if they're running a sale, they track what you actually pay. This was a big deal in my previous company, where we were not tracking how much money we sold this product to the clients, the customers, and a year later they're turning back and returning the product, getting the full price. Customers get into the habit of returning products for the full price. Who wouldn't? When you're making money, like a revenue stream of returning drugs, their return percentages are increasing over time. So it's in human nature, let's put it that way. I attended some Duke professor, he calls it a fudge factor. So everybody bends the reality a little bit to the extent they feel comfortable. And a lot of for-profit companies are bending the truth a lot when they know they are not being tracked. When you're being tracked, everything stops. Another practice that ended in Turkey is called shortages. So you order 100 units, wholesaler sends you 100, pharmacy says, hey, I only got 95 in my box. I opened it, it's all 95. Wholesalers don't have the resources to go every pharmacy and count. They have to believe, so they give the credit for 5. This happens in the US, right? Yes? So what happens when you track serial numbers? Now the wholesaler, smart wholesaler is asking, which of these 5 serial numbers are missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I turned it off from the system. You cannot sell it anymore, or at least legally. That practice magically ended. Nobody receives, products that are less than full anymore. Everybody receives full, on time in full. Can you imagine the KPIs and metrics, how it went up magically, thanks to the serialization legislation? So I'm going to skip the US. It's actually 3 milestones. We passed first one at the lot level traceability. The second one is 12 months to go. And then the final one is the full traceability in 2023. And I'm going to start with my first case study. Thanks to serialization, we were faced with client situations where they need to manage all their suppliers. Because the drugs, you either make them in-house or you buy from your suppliers. In this particular case, we have a client, it's one of the largest generic companies in the world. They have more than 700 suppliers around the world. They buy products from them. So the question was, how do we measure the readiness of these suppliers? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Some of them we have never talked to in the past. How do we engage that many suppliers and ensure that they're doing the right thing? Who has been in supplier-facing projects in the past? Like the real project, like putting real capital investment? Few? How many suppliers at a time?
Mine was only one.
One, only one. Was it an easy project?
For me, yes.
Yes, okay. How about, who is going to raise the bar here? How many suppliers? 60. Was it an easy project?
No.
No? Why?
Well, difficulties of the parts because it was a reference generator unit that was going into space. So I had to pass the different kind of criteria to make it through the atmosphere.
So it's just the number. If you spend an hour with each of your supplier in a given week, how many hours a week? So you need a lot of people, right? So when you have hundreds of suppliers and thousands of products who you need to make sure that serialization happens, how do you handle it? Do you have enough people? I don't have enough consultants for this project. So what we did in this client, when we were faced with this challenge, we said, okay, we need to use some automation here. We put a survey, online survey together. We sent it out to suppliers. When we were receiving it, we said, okay, well, there's no way we can analyze this by brute force. Let's put some algorithms and then create a dashboard that takes all the inputs, the same format, aggregates it, analyzes it, and assess the risk of all the suppliers. Automated, instantaneous. So we focus our time in real relationship building and discussions. And a lot of the project management we found, and this is a case that's almost 2 years old now, and still going on, by the way, we found that a lot of the project management activities are easy to automate. Like what? Send them an email. I have a document that describes my requirements, and I need to share this with my suppliers. You're not going to put all them in an email. You're just going to say, hey, dear Bill, dear Joe, here's my document, here's my, just sending that email takes a lot of time. Tracking the responses. Who is using Excel in a day-to-day job today? Come on, I know all of you, come on. Who is not using Excel? Okay. Oh, you're not using Excel. Are you an actor? I just came from Las Vegas and I was just talking to my brother. I said oh my God, there are jobs in the world who doesn't use Excel. What do you do?
Data science.
Data science, okay, well, good. But you cannot claim you never used Excel.
I try not to.
You try not to, okay. So that's the case study. So we put this initial strategic framework in front of our client and we said, look at this project from a risk management perspective. You take care of your internal sites and you take care of your external network to be compliant. That's to protect the downside risk. But then there's always an upside opportunity. If you do more than just compliance, you can actually gain something out of it. All that data, think about being able to track all that data coming in. What can you do with that? So those are all the upside opportunities, and that's where it gets into the really fancy, nice supply chain ideas like supplier collaboration, end-to-end supply chain optimization. In one of my jobs, we were actually doing a project with Walmart. They were measuring us, we were the supplier, they were measuring us by the must arrive by date performance. You know that metric? Very nice metric, like must arrive by date. It has a beginning date and an end date of 4 days window. If you're early, you pay penalty. If you're a day late, you pay penalty of 3%, maybe different by supplier. We were losing more than $1 million a year paying Walmart because we were not hitting in that. Nobody pick up the phone and call Walmart and say, hey, why is this happening? Can we streamline this so we can always fit in that window? They were ordering on Thursdays, they were ordering on Mondays, and blah, blah, blah. Nobody was tracking the data. We collected order data, put them in a dashboard, figured out what's going on. Just visualizing the data was like, aha, this is complex. Let's streamline it. Let Walmart order only on Mondays. We always prepare a day later, ship it on Tuesday, it arrives by this date, no matter which mode you ship. We had a chart that's like a heart attack diagram. It was our must arrive by date performance. It was like 0% and then 100%, 20%, 30%. So it was all unpredictable. Within 2 months of a project, tracking that data in the dashboard, we went up to 99-point-something%. All that $1 million+ penalty just disappeared. Real life case study. But we started collaborating with our suppliers, with our customers, and we started using the data. So after the collection of this much data, and in hundreds of suppliers last year, what we found was a shocking truth for the industry. 70% of my suppliers, or the overall suppliers we surveyed, did not even have resources to do this project. More than 60% of the suppliers did not initiate their pilot project. More than half of the suppliers did not have a capital budget approved. So this is a dashboard, a simplest form. With a lot of data behind it, the right questions asked, it's summarized, it's aggregated, it's presented to the leadership in the company. This started our execution phase of the project. This was the end of our strategy project. This simple dashboard, one-pager, started our execution process. They recognize that we have a problem. And here's some methodology we used by asking some questions in different categories, in timeline, in scope, in resources, financials. We categorized the suppliers in this chart, heat map, the likelihood of non-compliance and the business impact of non-compliance. When both of them are high, you're in the red zone. And if you're in a red zone supplier, you need attention. So if I have 100 suppliers and only 20 of them are in the red zone, what do? I have limited resources, limited budget. I spend my time and effort in these suppliers, right? And think about this being automated, and it's live. Every time a supplier updates something, they may be moving from red to green or green to red. And you have a constantly prioritized, remember that skill, prioritization skill? Constantly prioritized set of suppliers that you can pay attention. Forget about serialization. You can do this in any of your topics with your suppliers or with your customers. Which of my customers are at risk of terminating the contract? Build your risk assessment methodology, try to be objective, your service level for that customer, your cost to that customer, the number of competitors in that product for that customer, whatever the factors are. You have come up with a methodology, you prioritize your customers, and you attack the highest risk customer to fix the relationship. But these are only happening with the dashboards. Some more examples of dashboards now. Top challenges of CMO stands for Contract Manufacturing Organization in the industry. So the challenges that they face might be different. So you cannot, in today's world, you cannot treat everybody the same way. We are used to running our supply chains as one size fits all. But today, we don't have that luxury. Right? We have multiple supply chains. We have a supply chain that's premium speed for premium customers. Right? You pay Amazon Prime. Who's Amazon Prime member? Yeah, I just ordered Echo. I'm waiting to use it. So I'm a Prime customer. I'm getting 2 days for free shipments. I like it. They have a totally different process of meeting that versus a standard week or 2 weeks, right? They have a different supply chain process for that. So why do we have single supply chain meeting at all? So that's the result of that project. We come up with our own management dashboard. It's a branded solution now. We have since sold this tool to a number of large generics and branded companies around the world. And with this tool, we're managing more than 1,000 suppliers in the serialization world. When we have that many suppliers in that tool, at the site level, packaging line level, product level, that data that never existed before, now the ideas start flowing from the customer saying, oh, this tool can do that. Can you also give me a report that shows this? Can you also tell me which of my suppliers don't have a contact name yet? And believe me, there's a lot. We are managing our suppliers without a contact name for years. We are sending a survey. The supplier sends back an answer saying that I'm no longer your supplier since 12 months. Okay, thank you. We recognize, we update the records. Let's go back. So we don't have the master data. So managing that data, think about it. It highlights, and if you split this customer or supplier base among supplier relationship managers, let's say 10 of them, everyone has 10, you can do a little gamification based on the metrics and KPIs, which supplier relationship manager is doing a better job than the other. Which normally, everybody gets into that business quarterly review and talks. Oh, how good we are, we love you guys, you love us back, it's great, yeah, we have some problems, but we're going to overcome that in the next quarter, and it goes on and on and on. With data, you take all that fluff out of the quarterly review meeting and you just focus on what matters. Case study number 2. So maybe I'll stop there. Any questions on that supply? I know a lot of you are interested in the supplier side. And this is not big data. It is just a dashboard. It's not too big, but it's getting bigger.
What preventive measures can you put in so you don't get surprised? Like you said,
What kind of surprises?
well, the surprises that you got, not our supplier for the past year. It seems like somebody wasn't really on top of what's going on.
Correct. Well, without data, you don't know. So by structuring the data and collecting the data and putting a process in place to update the data, you can actually start measuring that. We actually run into suppliers that they told us they're API manufacturers, they're active ingredients. They have nothing to do with packaged finished goods. So our client didn't even know how to classify them for whatever reason. So it's a continuous process. As we learn more and more about the issues in the data, issues in the dashboard, it actually starts being visible. Any other question?
Yeah, so my question was with regards to the survey that you need to send for collecting the data. How do you keep track of the accuracy of the survey responses that you get?
Great question. So, by asking careful questions and monitoring the fields with the technology that they cannot put wrong data in. It's a drop-down menu, as simple as that. I have done this exact same survey in Microsoft Excel with 100 tabs in it, and the response rate we got was 5%. We did this with hundreds of suppliers. We exceeded 50-60% response rate within 2 weeks. That was significant response that we can analyze and actually represent the entire portfolio. We had clients that exceeded 98% response rate. Simple questions, very structured, from drop-down menu. It prevents you to put wrong data in as much as possible, and then you improve the quality of the data. And since it's all electronic, you run a simple query and say, show me the missing data. It just brings in front of you. And you assign it to the right person. They go and urge the supplier to fill it in. We automate the project management. Remember that it sends an email reminder every Monday morning if there's a missing survey or past due action item. There are a ton of things that you can do with this new dashboards and technologies that automate you out of the equation, and you only focus on what really matters, building the relationship, understanding the data, the metrics, and doing what is necessary, like making decisions. Otherwise, with Excel, you're all over the world, you don't know how to aggregate the data because somebody wrote a whole paragraph telling about the full history of your relationship, the other said yes. So who has time to analyze and combine these two fields now? We don't want yes, We don't want a whole paragraph that we don't have time to read. What we want is one of these 6 levels of readiness that you need to pick. It's very well defined. So that you need to be smart about what you ask, of course, to improve the accuracy. Okay, so the second one is a case study that I am most proud of, because at the end of this month, on the 30th, we are going to be reviewed by Gartner in an official vendor briefing. This tool started as a pilot idea when we were doing a sterilization project in a packaging line. What we observed is there's a huge efficiency loss in the packaging operation. And if that efficiency loss, 30-35%, sustains, then we're losing all the margin. We're putting a lot more resources and time to produce the same amount of product. So our client said, we have a problem. We actually said, okay, well, what is your baseline data, baseline OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, so that we can measure? So we don't know. We never measured. So with them, we designed a tool that can measure the overall equipment effectiveness in a packaging line. It's basically a time tracking and activity tracking tool, very simple to use. And operators click the state of the line that it's running, and then which product it's running. If it's down, which machine failed. By understanding the data, 724, we ran this pilot and we identified up to 6-7% improvement opportunity in the OEE. But then during the actual implementation, we beat that to 10-15% improvement without doing any Lean Six Sigma, just measuring it and showing it back. So the case for the tool or an investment for this was that if we improve the direct labor, but efficiency by just like 0.5%, it pays back the tool within the same few months, basically. So the project was the resulting tool we call OEE Tracker. That's our internal tool that we designed with our client's help. It took a couple of months to get the tool designed, implemented, and piloted in a packaging line. And for 10 weeks, we measured 2,600 hours of activity. Everything, 724, even if the line is idle, we track that it is idle. And then we started with 2 supervisors and 2 operator leads, and they liked the tool, they accepted the tool, they used it, and they even taught how to use it to their fellow supervisors very easily. And we started getting some nice reports out of the tool. And again, dashboard and the data. So it started with the data. We don't have the data to know what's our average efficiency. So we put a simple system to track the data. Once you track the data, then you start visualizing the dashboard. 16.7% of the time the line was running. 12.5% the line was down. The rest of the time the line was idle. So this is a 1-shift operation, so that's 1/3, 8 hours of the day. That makes sense. You see some days, some weeks, they actually did 2 shifts or 3 shifts, so they have higher hours in, but we can monitor the runtime and downtime very simply. It started with this. For the first time, we put a number to this line's efficiency, 55.6%. Best in class would be around 80, it's very difficult to get there. But they know now what is the baseline and where they need to be. And this started becoming interesting and more exciting. Then the immediate follow-up question was, but why is my line so much down? What causes it? We have 6 different types of activities that cause a downtime during operation. We have created individual buttons for it in the user interface. Setup, cleanup, resources are missing, something failed, line upgrade or a project, or maintenance. During the 10-week window, we of course observed the setup and cleanup took most of the time. It's stopping too much. Question?
Was there not an opportunity for human error in that should have been on the button, or was there not?
There is always an opportunity for human error. But our improvement of data tracking from nothing to this level, you don't even care about the human error at that time. So what's happening is many of the companies who don't have the funding to put in a major manufacturing execution system, which costs around $1 million or more, and it takes a year or 2 to implement, they don't track anything, or they use simple Excel logbooks or paper. Somebody logs it, and then What is the likelihood of making an error in a logbook versus Excel versus just clicking the right button?
No, I meant like for humans on the packaging line. Because if the people on the packaging line are making errors a good majority of the time, firing people or getting rid of people could
Yes,
be
yes.
a
The reason of
big-
failure.
Right.
Okay, so we have this either failure or resources missing. So if the key operator is missing and the line is not operating because of it, it's the resources missing, so you click that.
Oh,
If they are operating but somebody screwed up the cotton machine or the unscrambler machine, right? They put it as unscrambler. Then it's the maintenance guy who comes in and figures out what's wrong. And then he may come up with, oh, you did it again? I told you that don't press that button. And then he puts a little description saying that this stupid guy keeps pressing that button. So we have a way to collect as much data, but very simply. What happened is, you can also go one level deeper in every activity called tasks by finding out what is the type B cleanup taking versus type A. And what we track also the operator's name and user ID, of course. So if the same operator is doing this, running the line, and we see the cotton machine keep breaking, but then the operator B comes in and his cotton machine works great, the same cotton machine. By doing data analytics as simple as compare operator A and B, what's wrong with the operator A? Everything else being equal, cotton machine doesn't like this guy or what? What's going on? So these are the insights that can come out of the data. Or the machines that you find as cotton machine being the most trouble, and what you do, you attack that one first. Like, why would you deal with a videojet printer when it's not even significant when you have the cotton machine stopping the line and the stoppage of the line is very costly? Right? Everybody waits. All the machines are idle. Fix the cotton machine. When you look at the cotton machine, then you look at when it fails the most, with operator A or with operator B. Or, after what activity it fails. So we go to that level of granularity because we're tracking the activity. So the amount of insights coming out of this is unbelievable. Like our client was showing it to their VPs and they were like, wow, if we can get this one, from this line, I want it in all my lines. And actually, this is a client that we are now going with all the lines. We're already in 5 lines. As of now, we're going all the way to all the site monitoring. And what we are doing also, for every single task instance being recorded, you can run the task performance analysis. So this is my lower limit and upper limit of type B cleanup. Do you think this process is under control? No. Well, when we begin, there was no upper limit and lower limit. These are just bogus numbers. We just said, how about 3 hours and 1 hour? So it needs to be somewhere in between, right? This is governed by a standard operating procedure, how variable it can get. 56% coefficient of variation. So why? Find out what happened here. It turns out that it was a mistake. It's an outlier, you take it out. Find out that, there's another one here that they stopped the cleaning, they went to lunch, they come back, then we realized that, we're not tracking this. So let's improve the tool so we can track those breaks, forced breaks in between, so it's not like something took half an hour, it's just that they stopped in half an hour. So simple policy change, no longer, lunch in between the cleanup. Finish it up, then go to lunch. I'm not saying they should do that, but it can improve the performance and the predictability. And then you start shaving the hours from the downtime. So at the end of the day, we predicted a quick wins of 6% after a number of months of trying this. Multiple lines have shown 10 to 15% improvement by just operators liking what they see. They're taking it upon themselves to improve the operations and without any changes, any major like Lean Six Sigma or anything.
So a big component of the success of this project, I'm guessing, came from user interface and user experience, right, for the operators to be able to basically...
Correct.
So this looks like a web interface. Is that what...
It is a web tool, yes.
So they have the ability to actually get a connection to the web tool to enter the information?
Correct. There's a screen, 24-inch screen. We start with a laptop in the pilot. Now they like the tool. We went ahead and put a 24-inch screen. It's a touch screen. It's an all-in-one Dell computer. I can give you the model number if you want. So you can just press a number button and it starts recording. So it is a web interface. It needs to be user friendly. So it's my packaging fellows call it human-machine interface. Humans are interacting with the machine. It needs to be super easy.
So even taking a step further, like you said, doing a touchscreen version on an iPad, so it's even more portable.
Well, iPad is too small. We prefer the large screen. And there's a lot of fat fingers in the operations. Not all ladies operating them. So once we started tracking the activities, then of course our minds start going crazy. Like, holy, we can track a lot of things. OEE over time, like month over month over month versus our target. We can track our number of batches that we produce versus our target at the line level. We can aggregate it across all the lines. If you have a target of 100 batches and you only achieve 80, then all of a sudden you can measure it automatically. You don't need anybody to put together a report for you. We can do the root cause analysis. We can do a live dashboard of which lines are running. So my client, and some of them are here, their methodology was listening if there is some noise coming from the line, and if it stops, they just go out and see what's wrong. That was the policy, listening. Well, you can only listen to the line next door. What about the line at the other corner of the facility? Now you look at a dashboard that shows 3 lines running, 1 line down. If it's down, it tells you why. We went one step further and we put in a call support button. So if the operator needs support, they select call maintenance. Maintenance guy gets an SMS. You're requested from line 5. And what normally takes an hour or 2 to find them and to bring them to the line, now takes 5 minutes. So you're saving time there as well. So once you start using the data in a dashboard format, and the final improvement, we start using the sensors, counting the number of bottles, counting the speed, putting lower limit, upper limit, and saying, hey, you're down, but I'm counting. So what's wrong? Give a pop-up screen to say, oh, make sure you record put the right activity in here. Or if you're running, but I'm not counting. I have a vibration sensor on this machine. It can say I'm vibrating, which means I'm working or not. So more the data, the better. Temperature, humidity, air pressure, some of the must-dos for pharmaceutical industry. And this was the tool that came out of it, and I'm not going to spend too much time. So this was the tool that we worked on over the last, let's say, 8 to 10 months. And after this success, we are now going full digital factory in this particular site. We have one client ordered in Europe, who's a manufacturer, another one is a 3PL logistics provider, and a fourth one in New Jersey, a packager. So we have 4 clients now in different stages, and it's becoming very popular. And the reason is, it is simple, it's cost effective, it uses the data, your own data, and it improves your operation very fast. And how much time it takes for us to put this in place? 1 day. Same day installation, configuration, training, and you're out of there, and they start operating. And that's Internet of Things. Why? Because we use sensors that can be put in place and activated in 3 minutes. We don't run cables anymore. Why? It's wireless. So compete with the big MES provider where they go in for 6 months, wiring everywhere, every machine, and then the client in Europe that asked us to put this in place, they called us Thursday night. They said, we want you, because we told them before with our demos and everything, we can do this in 1 day. They said, we want you to come in and put this on Monday. Why the rush? I mean, yes, we said we can do it in a day, but why are you rushing? Our head of technical operations for the region coming on Tuesday. We want to show some capabilities. Sure, our team had to work a little bit overtime in the weekend. We put this on operational, and then the head of tech ops, regional tech ops, come in and say, I like it. Are you operating this on every line? That's the plan, sir. Try doing that with an MES system that takes $1 million or $2 million. It will take you forever to get it approved. And for that reason, smaller companies don't invest in any technology. But that's the reason the IoT is changing the world. Digitalization is changing the world because it's cheap, it's accessible, it's very easy to implement, and the data can make a lot of impact. And I told you at the beginning of my talk that I learned what big data means. My brother here who designed the tool actually, for the first time he gave me these sensors, the vibration sensors. We're walking the line and then we're trying to find the best place to plug this. It's a magnetic based sensor. We couldn't put it on the stainless steel one, which is pretty much the whole equipment set. We found a little old equipment that we plug it in. And I said, I want to get notifications, email notifications every time this vibrates. I'm super excited. It's our first ever sensor. 24 hours later, I called Engin. I said, turn this damn thing off. I got 180 emails. I cannot handle this anymore. That's when I realized it is big. When you have one sensor in one line, a human cannot take care of the data. When you have hundreds of sensors and hundreds of lines, that's big data. And you need algorithms to handle that. And it's simple as, tell me percent of the time this machine is vibrating. That's it. Let the algorithm calculate and give it to you. So it's not super sophisticated. Question?
There's always, with new technology and any technology, there's always the possibility and probability that at some point technology is going to break. So how does it notify people that it's either not working or this one sensor is not working, and do they have to call you or the company to come replace it, or do you teach them when you put it in how they can repair it themselves?
Yeah, very good question. Again, thanks to IoT, some of these sensors are super smart. You can know their battery level, and they last for 2+ years. So you put it in, you forget for a year or two. And if there's something wrong, your sensor dashboard will tell you this is not connected, something is wrong. And some of these sensors are now able to be programmed remotely. You know that Tesla case study when they figured out that it was too low? What the guy did, instead of calling millions of cars, he went into the dashboard and raised the car half an inch or an inch with one button, versus what GM or Ford would do. I mean, that's amazing, right? These guys are building their own supply chain to manage after-sales support with the click of a button. And that's what we are trying to do as well. If a sensor is not working, what we will need to do is ship them a new sensor, ask them to replace it with the old one, and we already pre-programmed it so it's automatically connected to the gateway and up. So no wires. So we don't even need to send a person. Why would you send a person for a sensor that's only like a few $100s? Right? So this is, the technology is actually allowing you to manage that, and then since you're tracking the data, if there's something wrong, you can always alert the user. It's up to you, it's a notification. Another question here?
Are you dealing with the change management / resistance to all this implementation personally, or that's up to the company you're working with?
Well, thank God that I'm not dealing with too much resistance, because it's either replacing a logbook that is too painful to keep track, and they stop doing it and they go into digital, or they like the fact that they can capture a lot of data and it's useful for them, so they're actually eager to learn. And we don't position this, it's never about, when we track you and then we're going to cut labor. It's never about that, it's about finding what is wrong and improving it together. So I think the case in Turkey, in this facility that we put it in Europe, in Istanbul, when we put it in the same day, then I asked the team, write a case study about it, because it's pretty cool that we put it in the same, over the weekend and put it in the same day, and they liked it. And guess what? They had a state-of-the-art MES system in place, and they have a specific toolkit called OEE, whatever they name it. They stopped using months or years ago because it was too complicated. They had this tool already. So it's going very into spaces, areas that we're very excited about, and it's about supply chain improvement. So when Jay insisted that we talk about the procurement, this is actually the next phase of our OEE tracker tool. The case study is the asset replacement strategy. So oftentimes the procurement guys are coming, facing a challenge that operations guys are complaining about this asset, they want to change it. There is not much business case capabilities at the operational level. They just put together, like, I have 3 codes, here's $1 million, 800 and 600, let's go with the 600. But why are we changing the machine? Is it failing too much? How much it's going to cost? Well, it's too old. And believe me, there are some assets in there that are older than me and still working. Some companies like to change them every so often. So the age is the number one reason. It gets older, you keep it, and then somebody said, that's enough, it's 10 years already. I cannot depreciate it anymore, just get rid of it. Sell it, put a new one. It's a rule of thumb, right? So what we are looking into right now, we are trying to automate this analysis so the procurement guys or just the operations head can say which machines, and there are a lot of machines, right? There are 15 machines in one line, when they have 10 lines, 150 machines. Which one is to keep, which one is to replace, and when? Depends on a lot of variables, besides the basic age. So we start tracking the production time across the production count. So that's like a typical efficiency. So on average, what is the productivity of my machine? And let's say after many instances, because I'm tracking this all, I can run a regression line and say, and this is going to get into advanced analytics. The guy who did this is our brand new hire, PhD, former professor, who's our data scientist. So now that all this data is coming in, we need a way to deal with it, right? That's why we hire data scientists to go into this. So here's our regression line that shows the typical productivity. But over time, this productivity line drops for whatever reason. For the same time, I'm producing less on average. Maybe it's taking longer to fix it, maybe whatever the reason is, but it's empirical data. So before and after, there's this much gap. So what we call this is productivity loss. If you're okay with less productivity over time, that there is a loss there. But then if you would like to invest in the maintenance to keep it up that level, then it's the reverse, it's the maintenance cost of keeping the lines going. And over time it gets worse, right? More issues or takes longer. So that's the second aspect. The third aspect, which we can track now with a lot of data, is the cost of failure. So if I break every 24 hours and it takes me 1 hour to fix it, mean time to failure, mean time to repair, and every hour of downtime costs me this much, then I know how much cost this machine causes me. Right? It's a function of mean time to failure, and I know every single machine when it fails because I track it with the tool. Mean time to repair, and what is the cost of the downtime? Some lines are super expensive, fully automated. They are producing millions of products. The cost of downtime for that line is higher versus some other lines are different. So when you track all that, when it reaches to a point of break even, where you calculate the net annual cost of operating that asset versus a brand new alternative, and if your company has a rule of thumb that says I want a 3-year ROI in every machine purchase, or 5-year ROI, you can calculate when it is time, when it is the break even. Of course, you don't automate this and then say, it's like the Amazon Dash that somebody press the button, a new machine comes in. It's not that easy in pharma, as you know, but at least it gives you a way to monitor when it is time to replace. You don't need to spend too much time with your procurement guys doing the analysis. You don't need to spend the time with your operation because they're busy operating. So that's another way going into the digital procurement. And this is going to be an add-on functionality which builds on the existing data set. And take it a couple of steps further. What we do now is we track the asset brand, make and model across multiple lines and sites and whatever. And we can tell you what are the top 3 choices for bundlers eventually, not right now. Field tested, not the sales talk. Right? How cool that is. Google is not tracking that. Amazon is not tracking that. But if you had that data as a buyer, what would you like to know? You would like to know the top 3 brands on every machine. Even their cell phone of the sales guy who's in the database called, and it's all automated. How long it takes to buy a machine? Who bought a big, bulky manufacturing equipment before? Anybody bought big equipment? Our cameraman. You bought a camera?
No, I used to buy CNC machines. Also, I used to build petrochemical plants.
How expensive is the CNC machine?
It's like about $500,000.
$500,000.
Yeah.
So how long it takes you to do the full cycle of analyze and bid and buy?
A couple months, I think.
Months, right?
Yeah, months. Yeah.
So that's an inefficiency there in the procurement. It takes months to do anything. Why not automate some of the parts of that decision? Okay, so these are the parts that when we track with IoT sensors and with precise data, we can be very precise in our decision making, and that adds a lot of value. And then the last client case study, which is in progress, is a client, a non-profit client in UK. They get donation drugs from manufacturers and they distribute it around the world, especially the third world countries. And they want to know the risks of the shipments in temperature, humidity, temperature excursions, amount of shipments. So the size of the bottle represents the amount of shipments or the value, and the colors represent risk. And our project is ongoing. We did this mock-up in an Excel. Yes, guilty as charged, used Excel. But then we are building the technology behind it to put the sensors in the containers, which communicates the temperature, humidity, the GPS location. So you can not only put these charts in the countries themselves, but you can route it from UK, however that goes, and any excursions or anything. So they have funny stories. Technology is improving rapidly. They put data loggers, the old tech data loggers in place, and they actually sent people behind the data logger after a month to collect the data and come back. Because the data logger was getting lost somewhere. So the technology is now, it's all online. It's just feeding. So amount of possibilities with the digital supply chain. So the three horizons to think about, if you take one big message out of this, how do we digitize a supply chain, create a supply chain? There are three horizons that we work on. The data, the 3Ds of supply chain management, data, dashboards, and decision making. You start with the data. If you don't have the data, collect it. Turn the data into dashboards with OE tracker and management dashboard. That's what we are doing. Digital factory, digital supply chain, supplier management. It's all in place, dashboards. But it doesn't make decisions for you. But when you move on to the decision making horizon, that's where the real value is. Optimizing your schedules. Telling people what to do when. How to route your shipment, because this is a risky route with this much probability of losing the freight due to temperature excursion versus a more expensive route with lower probability of not losing the freight, and on average it's a better choice. So think of those decision making that you can be doing in your factories, in your supply chain, in your procurement activities. So these are the three horizons, and it's only possible by the IoT technology, and I'm gonna spend maybe three slides to conclude. Some of you, or almost half of you, have heard IoT for the first time. So the technology behind it is very simple. You have sensors of many types, 60, 70 different types of sensors. You have gateways, which takes the data from the sensors, and it is connected to the internet. So that's how you make the things smart. Putting the sensors in the room, on the machine, take the data through the gateway, push it out. Those are just passive data collectors. There's a button or trigger you can use. So if you want, like the Amazon Dash, you press a button, something happens. It's also connected to the cloud. And then your IoT platforms, which are the Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, you name it. So that's the simple architecture behind it. And it just connects from one to another, and it's no time to activate. A lot of business applications, so it's really unlimited. You think of your problem, you can solve it with the IoT technology, you bring some smartness to it, and it's a low effort, low hanging fruit. And then we are only serving pharmaceutical and humanitarian logistics industries, but the opportunities are in every industry. We have some consumer packaged goods guys here, we have some logistics guys here that you're already doing, and applications everywhere. So, the key takeaway starts with the data, it ends with the decisions, but the dashboard is the bridge that you need to bridge the gap between data and the decisions. if you can develop dashboards with an end in mind, so it's not just to put data out there, it's just what are you trying to measure? What is the action coming out of that dashboard that adds a real bottom line value really fast. And with the Internet of Things, the cost of these applications are super low. It's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and I encourage you to think about it, maybe one small mini pilot in 2017 that you can do, and you can start showing the real results within the same calendar year or within even the quarter that you start. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for your time and interest and attention. Let me have a few more questions. I know everybody